Welcome back to the Coasters and Kickz podcast. Today we're diving into a topic that always stirs debate: Marvel Superhero Island at Universal's Islands of Adventure. This land has been around since the park opened in 1999, and while it has its fans, there's a growing argument that it may be time for Universal to move on. We're going to cover the history of the land, the details of Universal's contract with Marvel, why it feels outdated today, how it compares to what other parks are doing, and finally, what could possibly replace it. So buckle up, because this one's going to be fun. When Universal was planning Islands of Adventure in the mid-90s, they knew they needed a land that screamed big, recognizable characters. Naturally, superheroes came to mind. What's interesting is that Marvel wasn't actually their first choice. Universal initially wanted DC Comics. Think Gotham City, Metropolis, Batman, Superman, the works. That was essentially their first choice. They even had early concept art drawn up that showed a dark, gritty Gotham City cityscape with towering skyscrapers, moody alleyways, and even plans for a suspended Batwing-style roller coaster. But to actually top it all off, it actually was going to share that space, that real estate with Superman. They were also actually going to think about not only just having Gotham City, but part of that land being Metropolis as well. It looked ambitious and very different from what we eventually got, but Warner Brothers ultimately passed, having already given Six Flags theme park rights to DC characters. So then Universal turned to Marvel, which at the time was not the Disney-owned juggernaut it is today, of course. In fact, in the mid-90s, if you weren't already aware, Marvel was bankrupt and desperate for cash. That made Universal's offer very appealing, and the two companies struck a deal. That deal gave Universal perpetual rights. So as long as they kept and keep the rides maintained and the land open, to use Marvel characters in their parks east of the Mississippi River. And that little clause is the reason why Disney, even after buying Marvel in 2009, can't put those same characters in Walt Disney World today. Now let's pause on that contract for a moment because it's honestly fascinating. Universal's agreement with Marvel is one of the most ironclad deals in the theme park industry. A little bit about how it works. Universal has the exclusive rights to use most of the Marvel characters in theme parks east of the Mississippi. Disney can use Marvel in their parks west of the Mississippi, which is why you see Avengers Campus at Disneyland, California. And technically, because cruises are considered maritime, it doesn't necessarily work the same. So it's kind of why you still see Captain America, Black Panther, Iron Man, Spider-Man on Disney cruises. It technically doesn't hinder them from using them on the cruises because it's completely different. As long as Universal keeps Marvel Superhero Island open and the rides in working condition, the contract doesn't expire. It's essentially indefinite. This means Disney can't build a Captain America ride in Epcot or a Hulk coaster in Magic Kingdom or a Wakanda in Animal Kingdom without renegotiating with Universal. And Universal, of course, has no incentive to let it go, especially when it comes to such a powerful IP without major compensation. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Marvel Superhero Island feels stuck in the past. Yes, the Incredible Hulk coaster still delivers one of the best adrenaline rushes in Orlando, and the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is a fan-favorite dark ride that pushed boundaries when it first opened. Guests still love these attractions, but when you look at the land as a whole, it's clear it hasn't been given the same level of care or upgrades that other areas of Islands of Adventure have seen. Theming feels like late 90s comic book splash art, which is charming in a nostalgic way. I mean, I love it to a certain extent. And we get that this was the aesthetic they were going for. But nowadays, it's reminiscent of the kind of theming you see at Six Flags with their DC Universe areas. Don't kill the messenger, please. Oversized character cutouts, flat building facades, and a sense of cheap rather than immersive. Compare that to the deeply layered storytelling in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, or even the bright, playful atmosphere of Seuss Landing, and Marvel comes across as shallow and dated. And let's be honest, the food situation is kind of rough. Cafe 4 and the Captain America Diner are serviceable, but they're nothing really to rave about. They don't really feel tailored to Marvel at all. It's just like generic burgers, pizza, and chicken tenders. In fact, one parkour warned, if you love the Marvel land there, don't do Cafe 4 then. It'll certainly tarnish your views. And that's a harsh but fair take in my most humble opinion. It's especially disappointing when you think about the dining experiences elsewhere in that park. In the Wizarding World, you can sip butterbeer, eat at the Three Broomsticks, and feel like you've stepped into the story. Marvel has the perfect opportunity to serve fun, character-inspired meals. But instead, you get the most basic theme park food possible. That lack of effort really highlights how this land hasn't been given the same TLC as others. Now let's zoom out. Other theme parks have raised the bar for what a superhero land can be. I mean, at Disneyland in California, Avengers Campus offers character meet and greets with the latest heroes from the movies, interactive shows, and even a stunt show on the rooftops. Is it perfect? No, but it feels fresh and directly tied to Marvel as we know it today. Meanwhile, Universal's land feels frozen in time, built around 90s comic book aesthetics that don't resonate with the mainstream anymore. For new fans who grew up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, walking to Marvel Superhero Island feels like stepping into a completely different and honestly less exciting version of the characters. For me, I fell in love with the characters that, you see at Marvel Superhero Island. So on one side of the coin, I love to be able to see and have those experiences with those characters in those iconic costumes and looks. But at the same time, those same costumes and looks, they honestly feel reminiscent of like a bad cosplay. Now, what if Marvel Superhero Island were to go? What could replace it? I honestly have a few ideas, and some of these ideas are obviously kind of general consensus, but some things I personally would like to see. Option 1, a Nintendo expansion. With Super Nintendo World already confirmed and been installed and is open at Epic Universe, it might make sense to expand Nintendo into Islands of Adventure 2. I mean, we already have a Donkey Kong Country at Epic Universe. We already have what a lot of people like to call Mario Land, when it comes to having Mario themed attractions and Yoshi themed attractions over at Epic Universe. Why not bring something like, let's say, me personally, I would love to see Zelda over here, to be honest, but I don't really see Zelda coming to replace, Marvel Superhero Island at all. Truth be told, I think that's what they may be doing over at the Lost Continent. But, we'll get into that a little bit later. But in all honesty, I could honestly imagine like a Luigi's Mansion, being put over at, Islands of Adventure. So here's to hoping Nintendo, we get some sort of Nintendo expansion over there. It'd be great. Or maybe even Sonic. I know Sonic is not necessarily a Nintendo property, but with the collabs between Nintendo with Mario and Sonic, I could honestly see something like that being discussed and possibly brought over instead of it being just a, Nintendo aspect of things. That'd be pretty cool. Option 2, a DreamWorks land. Like, scratch that. Since Universal already built a DreamWorks land in Universal Studios Orlando, this feels unlikely for Islands of Adventure to be 100% honest. Option 3, an expansion of Jurassic Park, or heck, Jurassic World. Expand into the Jurassic World aspect of things, since we already have Jurassic Park next door, essentially between, Marvel Superhero Island, Toon Lagoon, and then of course Jurassic Park. The land next door is Jurassic Park. technically it's Toon Lagoon. So Universal could expand that footprint further, but just like we mentioned, that would create a little bit of a theming gap. Right now you've got Marvel Superhero Island, then you've got Toon Lagoon, and then you've got Jurassic Park. If Marvel goes away and Jurassic takes over that real estate, you're left with a strange thematic jump. Toon Lagoon's wacky cartoon aesthetic doesn't necessarily flow naturally into dinosaurs. And honestly, Universal usually avoids doubling up on the same IP in one park. Each land is supposed to feel distinct, and separate, new, separate worlds in their own right. So I don't see them doing that. Now, my favorite option number 4 would be honestly bringing Bikini Bottom from SpongeBob over to Islands of Adventure. This could be a fun, colorful replacement. SpongeBob is one of Nickelodeon's biggest properties, and Universal has had ties to Nick in the past. You could build a Krusty Krab restaurant, a Jellyfish Fields play area, and rides themed to SpongeBob and Patrick, as opposed to just that little theme shop and meet and greet they kind of had at Universal Studios in Orlando. However, I honestly think if this idea ever happens, it would likely go in Universal Studios Florida instead as a replacement for The Simpsons, if Disney and Universal don't renew their deal for that IP. Hopefully they do renew it, because I feel like The Simpsons really does fit in to Universal Studios aesthetic. I don't really see Disney using it outside of maybe a character meet and greet, and it wouldn't be a regular character meet and greet. It'd probably be one of those meet and greets that are kind of scarce or reserved for like special events. So here's where I want to hear from you. If you had the power to replace Marvel Superhero Island, what would you put there? Would you expand Jurassic Park, bring in Nintendo, or go in a totally new direction? After you're done listening, hop over to my socials. I posted a poll today with these options, and I'd love to see what you pick. I may even share some of your takes in a future episode. Now, before I wrap things up today, I've got some fresh news updates from Universal Orlando that I think tie perfectly into this whole Marvel conversation. Because while we're talking about what could happen with Superhero Island, Universal is already making huge moves elsewhere in the parks. You may have seen the headlines. Universal just filed a demolition permit for 5 acres of the Lost Continent at Islands of Adventure. And when you look at like a map, honestly, the Lost Continent as a whole looks like it may be around that 5-acre mark. That includes the old Poseidon's Fury show building, which closed in 2023, despite them saying, that something may be coming to replace it, something's coming soon. And then the 8th Voyage of Sinbad Theater that has been sitting empty since 2018, otherwise used as storage and a cool-off area for guests. Now, Universal has confirmed construction activity will start in the coming months. But the big question is, what's it gonna be? Rumors point heavily toward The Legend of Zelda, like we mentioned earlier in the episode, which, again, this makes sense. Fantasy setting, huge global brand, and Nintendo is already proving to be a massive draw at Universal Studios Japan and Epic Universe, along with Universal Studios in Hollywood. Other names being floated around, my personal favorite for this area, aside from Zelda, One Piece. Huge backing, huge fan base. That would be a crowd puller. And not only that would it be a crowd puller, but something that every theme park would have in mind. Monetary. It's going to pull in funds. Think of all the merch that they could have. The Lost Continent doesn't necessarily have to be like a huge update. It make a couple of changes here and there. Obviously, demolish a couple things to kind of really build the world of One Piece and bring it in. Another concept, Wicked. Wicked, again, has a huge backing. I'm not sure of how large that fan base is compared to One Piece or Zelda, but I know for a fact it is huge. Or even more Wizarding World. Do another Wizarding World expansion. Again, I don't see that happening. I don't really see them doubling back, putting more, Wizarding World. But it is possible. Anything is possible. In the great words of Kevin Garnett. But if you ask me, Zelda really does feel like the strongest contender because it slots naturally into Islands of Adventure's lineup, with One Piece being a great second option because I truly do feel like that again slots naturally into Islands of Adventure's lineup. And if Universal wants to future-proof the park, a major Nintendo expansion is about as sure a bet as you can honestly get. And honestly, it's about time. Lost Continent has honestly felt like a ghost town for years. Beautiful architecture, absolutely. Amazing cuisine when it comes to mythos. But without a major attraction, it's basically a pass-through on your way to Hogsmeade or other areas of the park. Now, over at Universal Studios Florida, another big change. Hollywood Rip-Ride Rockit officially closed on August 18th after nearly 16 years. Demolition has already started. Big chunks of the tracks are gone, leaving only the massive live hill. And actually, as of now, the one loop that was still visible is no longer visible. It's no longer there. Universal filed permits under Project 830 for a new amusement ride, but they haven't announced what's coming yet. Speculation obviously is wild. Some guests think it'll be a Ghostbusters themed, coaster or attraction, which I think is a front runner, especially considering all the Easter eggs they put up, honestly, around the entrance to where the Ghostbusters attraction that used to be the Ghostbusters attraction as of late used to be, which honestly would tie it into the classic firehouse that's there and was once used as an entrance to the Ghostbusters attraction they used to have there. Others think it could be a Fast and Furious drift coaster, which, let's be honest, would be a much needed upgrade from the ride they have now. The Fast and Furious supercharged attraction, again, is fodder compared to the likes of, Skull Island, Reign of Kong, and that attraction in itself, while architecturally beautiful, the queue, amazing, which can be said the same thing when it comes to Fast and Furious Supercharged. The queue is a lot better than the ride, in my most humble opinion. So, in all honesty, something's got to be done with that. I mean, it doesn't really pull a huge crowd. I mean, when you look at a busy day at the parks, that ride honestly probably has to be one of the attractions that has the least of a wait. Personally, I think whatever replaces Rocket has to be something bold. The coaster was visible from all over the park, even from City Walk, kind of winding almost to the sidewalk of City Walk. Its replacement needs to be iconic. Something people want to ride again and again, not just once for the novelty. Just like with Rip-Ride Rockit, at least when despite the attraction being the same, it was different each time when you got a chance to ride it, choose what song you were listening to as you're on. And don't even get me started on the secret menu of songs that you could listen to while riding the attraction. It gave it re-rideability, or as gamers call it, replayability. New game plus, if you will. Now, meanwhile at Islands of Adventure, aside from the Lost Continent getting a much needed refresh, possible replacement, Jurassic Park River Adventure will be going down for almost a year-long closure in 2026. Now, that's an unusually long refurb, and it signals that Universal wants to modernize it in a big way, maybe upgrading animatronics. maybe refreshing the story beats to line up more with the new Jurassic World films, which the later I doubt. I think Universal would want to differentiate between Jurassic World at Universal Studios Hollywood, just like they have Jurassic World practically everywhere else, and then keeping Jurassic Park as exclusive to Universal Studios in Orlando. I just don't see them getting rid of that last classic Jurassic Park arch that they actually honestly have coming from over at Hogsmeade. I don't see that happening. Now, even if they don't get rid of it, and let's say they do go forward with upgrading it to Jurassic World, again, I truly do believe they probably upgrade that arch to Jurassic World. This essentially fits into a larger pattern we're seeing where Universal is investing heavily in refreshing older attractions while building new ones. They don't want any part of the park to feel neglected. And all of this, Lost Continent being bulldozed, Rocket going away, Jurassic Park getting nearly a year of TLC, ties directly back to the Marvel conversation we've been having. It shows Universal is in this constant cycle of reinvention. They're willing to tear things down. They're willing to invest in refurbs and providing tender loving care to their attractions, their lands that they actually have existing. And they're always looking for the next big IP that will drive guests through those turnstiles. So when we ask what could replace Marvel Superhero Island someday, well, these updates tell us the answer is literally anything is possible. Again, call back to Kevin Garnett. Universal is not shy about making bold moves. Signing these new deals and partnerships with Nintendo. Heck, if you look at Epic Universe right now, there are roughly around 5 to 6 open plots. Their mindset is, okay, now we've got Epic Universe here. We've got all these brand new lands, but what can we do to drive not only this park forward, but our brand forward, to provide a better guest and park-goer experience? So, another question for you. Which of these updates excites you most? Is it the Lost Continent possibly becoming Zelda, One Piece, anything else? Is it the Rocket demolition and whatever's replacing it? Or is it Jurassic Park getting a huge overhaul? Let me know. Shoot me a message on Instagram, X, or wherever you're listening, because I'd love to know what you think is the clear sign of where Universal's headed next. Alright, that's going to wrap this week's episode. We covered a lot today. From the history of Marvel Superhero Island, to why it feels outdated, to the contract that keeps Marvel locked into Universal and keeps Disney hands off, and even the huge changes coming elsewhere in the parks, like the demolition of Red Bright Rocket, the future of the Lost Continent, and that massive refurb for Jurassic Park River Adventure. But before I go, I want to give you a little teaser. That's right, a little teaser, because this story isn't necessarily finished. There's one question I didn't fully tackle today, and if you haven't already guessed it, it's one I think a lot of you are already wondering about. What would it actually cost Disney to buy Marvel out of Universal's contract? I know, that's right. In a special bonus episode coming later this week, or technically this upcoming week, I'm breaking down the dollars and cents, the behind the scenes negotiations, and why a buyout might not be as simple or as cheap as you might think. So make sure you're subscribed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or iHeartRadio, and keep an eye out for that bonus drop. Until next time, keep dreaming big, and I'll see you in the parks.